We're here to surprise. There are a number of tenants groups who are pushing for a new rule within the city to have a maximum heat bylaw. That if the temperatures get up to a certain sweltering level during a heat wave, that people who live in their apartments or wherever else should be looked after by not broiling in that unit. Want to bring in Stewart from ACORN Hamilton, who joins us now. Stewart, thank you for doing this today.
Hi, thank you for having me on.
Really appreciate you doing this. How would you like to see something like this work? What, in your mind, what would be the bylaw? How would this work? What would we be looking at?
So the Residential Tenancies Act, provincial legislation, and Hamilton's own heat bylaw already have provisions in place for requiring heat be available in the winter. So they both state that unit has to be at least 20 degrees Celsius in all habitable spaces. So really, we're just looking to copy most of that language and just instead of at or above 20 degrees in habitable spaces, just change it to at or below 26 degrees in all habitable spaces. And the reason for 26 degrees is because that's sort of the threshold where, vulnerable people's health can really start to be affected by the heat, and it can really start to have a negative effect on their health. And this, like, the seriousness of this is just as great as it is with cold. Like, people can die as a result. So it is something that we believe is important to protect people from.
And who would this be for ideally, would this be for every apartment unit in the city, or would it be only for certain ones with tenants that have certain challenges? Or what would be the vision for the idea?
So in the end, every rental across the city, be it an apartment, be it a townhouse, be it a single detached home that's being rented, they would all be covered just as those other legislations I mentioned. They cover all rentals for heat. Now, whether or not everything comes in all at once or is phased in gradually, that has yet to be seen, because certainly Hamilton has a very large tenant population. So having something like this come in, there will be logistical issues that will have to be contended with, such as the supply of these units, the supply of the manufacturing, the supply of installers, the supply of technicians, all those types of things. So it's not going to happen overnight just because it can't, but how long it takes to implement, we're still waiting to flesh all those details out entirely.
One of the challenges, I would assume, we all know what housing costs in the city already. It's an expensive place to live, an expensive place to rent. Are you concerned that if you do this, that the people who rent the apartments are simply going to pass along the costs to the tenants, and the tenants are ultimately going to end up paying for this?
So the Residential Tenancies Act, a lot of Hamilton's rentals are still rent controlled. New builds from the last couple of years are not. So those landlords would be able to, arbitrarily increase the price of rent once a year. I really don't know if there's anything that can be done in those cases. But as far as anything older than a few years, those rents can only increase by a certain percentage each year. And so we're not worried about those units being affected by the price. And as for the cost of rentals overall, I mean, we've seen this skyrocketing already without any protection provisions being added to what's already there. So, the rent is going to increase whether landlords are being required to protect their tenants or not. So
Do we know if this kind of thing exists in other cities, this protection?
In Canada, no. There is a municipality in Ontario, I believe it's Mississauga, but I could be wrong, that has it has, so Mississauga has, I just checked my notes, Mississauga does have a maximum heat bylaw that requires 26 degrees, but it only applies in units where air conditioning is already present. So, like, a lease already includes air conditioning as one of the amenities. So otherwise, in Canada, we would be the first, but we are also one of the most affected cities of this kind of extreme heat because of our heat dome and stuff like that, a lot of parking lots and a lot of humidity because of where we are geographically. The only city that was said to be more affected by this is going to be Windsor. So Hamilton is definitely a good starting point for such a bylaw to be brought in. There are a few jurisdictions in the United States that have bylaws similar to what we want, and in those places we've seen that the landlords initially complain about it, but eventually they just go along with it, and now it's just part of the routine. So,
Stewart, one of the, and I mean, maybe we're getting too specific here, but how would this be enforced? And it sounds like that may be a stupid question because you said, okay, it's 26 degrees. If it's 26 degrees and you don't have air conditioning, but, you know, I'll often go on my app on my iPhone. We were just talking about iPhones a moment ago, and it'll say City of Hamilton temperature is whatever, but different parts of the city, or, you know, someone's apartment may be facing the sun, so their apartment is actually a lot hotter than 26 degrees. How do you enforce this kind of thing?
Well, so it would be the exact same as the heat that's required in the winter. Both of the legislations I mentioned earlier have a very specific rubric as to how temperature is tested and determined. So basically, the temperature needs to be the temperature needs to be at the temperature required by the law. I believe it's 1 meter up from the ground and 1 meter out from the wall in any habitable space. So,
and I'm not trying to be ridiculous here. I really am not. I'm wondering, is it measured by the city? If the city weather has a 26, Hamilton was 26 degrees today, does that count as the measurable, or does it have to be in each unit that you would have to measure? I guess is what I'm getting at.
No, it's the inside temperature, not the outside temperature. So, if I think that my unit is too cold in the winter, I leave a digital thermometer on my desk for a while, and I find, the last 2 days it's been 18 degrees. I call the city. They send someone over with temperature measuring equipment. They measure in the appropriate places. They determine, yep, you're right, it is too cold in here. They send a letter to the landlord saying, hey, you have to ensure that this unit that you own is kept at a suitable temperature.
That's okay. That makes sense. So it's each individual. You would record it yourself as opposed to just a citywide. All right. It's a fascinating topic. I wish we had a lot more time to talk about it. Stewart Klazinga from ACORN Hamilton. Thank you so much for taking time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great day.